Well, hello again, fellow investigative interviewers. Welcome to another episode of The Practitioner. Today, we'll continue with the topic of trauma-informed interviewing. Now, in the previous two sessions, we talked about how this trauma-informed interviewing should be more than a buzzword, as well as how the psychology of trauma could present during an interview, often in ways that could be interpreted incorrectly and erroneously deemed to be unreliable. Today, we will look at the 5 phases of the PEACE investigative interviewing framework to give you an understanding of the foundation so that you will have a better appreciation for the next episode that will include the trauma-informed components that you may choose to infuse or inject if and when appropriate. So what exactly is PEACE? This slide shows us the 5 phases, which generally would start with the inner circle, the planning and preparation, and then progress clockwise from the top green one. Now, I say generally, as it should not have to be a linear progression. A good interviewer would hop gracefully from phase to phase as needed, in the same way a cruise ship captain could modify the itinerary according to the weather conditions. As with most skills, this ability will come from practice and mistakes. Perfection should never be the goal, as it would be unrealistic when the components needed and their appropriate order would depend on the context of the investigation in conjunction with the attitude and behavior of the interviewee. Let's start with planning and preparation phase. The P stands for planning and preparation of the interview and includes setting goals and objectives, as well as considering anything that could help or hinder us in our attempts to achieve them. The goals are to have a conversation that would yield information of high quantity and quality. We refer to this as being productive while not causing pain and trauma to the interviewee. The objectives are to find out as much relevant detail as possible about actions and conversations, which often relate to the requirements needed to prove wrongdoing, the actus reus, what we call the guilty act, and mens rea, the guilty mind for criminal investigations, and the actus reus alone for many civil matters. People, which would include anyone who may be relevant to an understanding of what happened. This would include complainants, witnesses, respondents, and suspects. Locations, which would include any places that could shed light on the context and circumstances of the alleged act. Objects, which could be relevant to an offense element. For example, in an assault with a weapon allegation, a candlestick might be an important topic to probe. Times are any relevant dates and times that could be instrumental in understanding what happened. They could be precise, such as at 1 p.m., or approximate, such as about 1 p.m. They could also refer to duration, such as it lasted 3 minutes, or relatively descriptive, such as before or after the main event. The E stands for engage and explain and deals predominantly with explaining the goals and objectives and demystifying the process while building a connection with the interviewee that we often call rapport. This phase is crucial if you hope to meet the planned expectations of the next phase. If you cut corners and ask for an account without having built a connection, you may sabotage the opportunity to achieve your goals and objectives. The A stands for account, clarify, challenge, and is the phase where the interviewee is prompted to provide an initial free recall narrative account that, if needed, would be developed through subsequent questioning. The challenge component refers to asking for an explanation for inconsistencies or discrepancies as they arise. This account phase often requires acceptance that the interviewee's agenda, what they want to say and how they want to say it, must be sought before we seek our own. This requires emotional intelligence, so we are aware of our own biases and prejudices, which we all have, and above average active, or as some say, effective listening skills. Imposing our agenda too early is the antithesis to the required continuous rapport, as it reduces the control and autonomy many interviewees must be allowed before they feel comfortable enough to give us the detail for which we ask. The C refers to the close phase, which marks the end of the interview proper. It provides an opportunity to wind the process down with the same level of respect and rapport with which it began. It may involve satisfying the emotional needs of the interviewee as well as demystifying the post-interview parts of the investigation. This is our opportunity to show that we truly care for the person to whom we just spoke, instead of getting what we wanted and leaving them alone and confused. The E refers to the evaluation phase, which is the opportunity for the interviewer to assess the interview process and any information received. This is where we would have the opportunity to objectively assess the information received and question our prior case theory. It is also where experienced interviewers would proactively look for alternative hypotheses to escape the jaws of tunnel vision. Additionally, this phase is where the best interviewers would actively question their performance and look for ways to improve for the next interview. Well, that's the PEACE framework for those who are unfamiliar with it. Now that we know what the phases are, we can better understand how to inject trauma-informed components into each as needed. Now, we don't have to start from scratch and have a new model that only addresses the needs of the traumatized, as we already have a solid foundation on which a trauma-informed house may be built. That, folks, will be the focus of the next session. That's all. Cheers.